So I was watching this video of Kevin O'Leary, and he was really going into interesting detail talking about Bitcoin and how Bitcoin could be in danger of turning into the technology of yesterday. We could see Ethereum essentially rising up and overtaking Bitcoin and taking a lot of the attention away from the technology. Now, I understand you have to really look into who Kevin O'Leary is, and of course, his analysis. I'm definitely going to be including a link to this video, but really, I mean, he's talking about, are we witnessing peak ETF involving Bitcoin, involving these various different things, and of course, these various different variables are going to be playing a big role. I mean, I was looking at the news involving it, and I mean, there's a lot of interesting things that are happening in Switzerland, on an international scale. I mean, the concept of the end of the Bitcoin, ultimately, I mean, you have to take into consideration the trend of the Bitcoin, as it's been from the start. Now, I'm going to say Bitcoin's always going to be around. I'm going to say Bitcoin has its place simply because it's established itself so well ingrained within the public consciousness. Now, does this mean Mr. O'Leary is wrong when he makes this analysis? No. Mr. O'Leary's pretty much right down to the bottom of it, because you really take into consideration how these different technologies like Ethereum offer this smart contracts, and essentially have been taking up a lot of this sort of space. As far as Bitcoin goes, you have to take into consideration all the different volatility that we've been seeing or across the board, involving the various different developments that have been happening. So of course, I mean, just thinking about all these different things, they definitely have had a negative impact on the overall the way that we've seen these technologies progressing and moving forward, in the overall greater context of how we've been seeing these developments taking place. Now, does this necessarily mean that seeing this market cap of 281 where we currently are, that as things move forward in the future, is this going to mean the end of Bitcoin? Now, of course, nobody can say. I mean, we could see technologies like Ethereum rise up and overtake Bitcoin for that #1 position, and I think that it is well within the possibility. Especially when you take into consideration people who might be feeling disgruntled involving the value of Bitcoin where it currently is, versus where it was at one point. I mean, who's to say? Certainly regulations are going to be a big central part of this conversation as these various different things continue to develop and move forward, and on an international scale. And ultimately, things are relatively fringe at this point as far as how there's so much unpredictability in the space, and how these we've been seeing these different developments taking place. And cryptocurrency definitely is in its early stages. It is interesting to see how the people have been really warming up to the alternative cryptocurrencies on here, though. That's also something to be taken into consideration. Of it's not just Bitcoin anymore, and this is also one of the fundamental things. So I'll definitely be including a link to this video so you guys can watch Mr. O'Leary speak on Bitcoin, because obviously I know him mostly from Shark Tank. He's one of those, but he is a smart guy, and when he talks about stuff like Bitcoin and the various different, I mean, he is optimistic about from where it seems he does recognize that there is a future for cryptocurrency, and he's a person who has his ear to the way that people in the upper echelon of the financial system and so forth. So it's a good voice as far as listening to those things. I think it's pretty, of course, I'm not a financial advisor. Obviously this whole video is for entertainment purposes only. All that being said, I mean, it is interesting to see how Bitcoin has been moving forward and developing in just the short amount of time since I've been paying attention to it. I've been involved in cryptocurrency for quite a few amount of years now, and I've seen a lot of volatility. Just in such a short amount of time, I've seen a lot of different things happening, involving this space, and it is. I would say we are in the early stages. I mean, I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I would say that you get experience from paying attention to these things, and of course, it is interesting to see how these different developments have been taking place. Also, taking a look at XRP. I think as far as the banks and how these various different developments are going to happen, it is interesting to see the conversation that's happening. According to obviously what we've been seeing happening involving the conversation that's happening involving Facebook and data and all these different things are definitely shifting the way that people look at these different technologies and moving us swiftly into the world of tomorrow. So there are a lot of different interesting developments happening across the board, and I'll definitely be paying attention to this stuff firsthand. So I'll definitely see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.